Welcome to Mukesh Manoharan Studio. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and press the bell icon before we proceed. Imagine, if you will, the steady, rhythmic hum of a massive, state-of-the-art manufacturing floor. It's a vast, echoing space where thousands of pristine, perfectly engineered components move seamlessly down the assembly line. It is a true symphony of modern engineering, a place of absolute order, of pinpoint precision and predictable, unwavering perfection. Every single gear, every automated arm, every operator moves in complete synchronization. But in the incredibly high-stakes world of global production, a single, microscopic, hidden flaw, an almost invisible deviation from that perfection, can shatter that quiet order in an absolute instant. Suddenly, the symphony turns into chaos. Today, we are stepping directly into the anatomy of one such crisis. We aren't just going to look at a dry business process. We are embarking on a deep, forensic investigation. We're going to deploy a legendary problem-solving framework, originally forged in the fires of the Ford Motor Company, known to industry veterans as the 8 disciplines, or simply the 8D methodology. It's essentially the ultimate, systematic investigator's handbook for tracking down the true, hidden source of a failure and ensuring that it is permanently eradicated. The date is June 5, 2026. The morning is proceeding exactly as planned until the atmosphere in the facility shifts the exact moment a high-priority email arrives. The words on the screen are chilling. Customer XYZ just rejected 250 pieces due to severe surface scratches. This isn't just a minor hiccup. This is a direct, devastating blow to customer trust. It's a rejection that instantly threatens hard-earned reputations and millions of dollars in future bottom lines. When a high-impact failure like this strikes, a dark cloud of panic usually descends. But panic is the enemy of truth. You cannot simply walk out onto the floor and guess what went wrong. And you absolutely cannot afford to be wrong twice. You need a systematic, unrelenting, cold pursuit of the facts. This is the exact moment the 8D framework is activated. It stands as a beacon of pure logic and a storm of anxiety, demanding that we first mentally prepare, deeply understand the stakes, and recognize that an immediate, highly coordinated response is our only path out of the dark.
To truly understand the gravity of this issue and confront it head-on, no single person can act alone. The situation demands an elite, cross-functional strike team. We need the best minds in the building. We bring in Mukesh, the sharp, uncompromising eye of quality control. We pull in Kumar from production, the man who knows the heartbeat of the assembly line better than anyone. We call on Ravi from maintenance, the mechanical whisperer who understands the machines, and Arun from supplier quality, the guardian of incoming materials. They gather in a quiet war room, the tension palpable. Their first critical task is not to magically fix the problem. No, their very first move is to secure the parameters of this corporate crime scene. They must draw a hard line around what is known and what is unknown before any evidence is compromised.
Inside that war room, they deploy a relentless, rapid-fire interrogation technique known as the 5W2H method. They become seasoned detectives, laying out the raw facts. What exactly happened? A severe surface scratch defect. Where was it officially discovered? Down at the final inspection line. When did this breach happen? On June 5th. Who raised the alarm and caught the bullet? Customer XYZ. Why does it matter so much? Because the risk of a total contract cancellation and further customer rejection is imminent. How is it brought to light? Through a manual visual inspection. And finally, the most painful question of all, how many? Exactly 250 pieces. They meticulously build an impenetrable, undisputed wall of facts. And with those facts laid bare under the fluorescent lights, the team realizes a terrifying truth. The clock is aggressively ticking. By the way, as we unravel this mystery together and dive deeper into the mechanics of problem solving, if you're finding value in this journey, please take a quick second to subscribe, like, and share the channel. It really helps us bring more of these deep dive investigations to light. Now let's look at what our team does the moment they realize the danger is still active.
The adrenaline surges. The cold, hard facts reveal a stark, terrifying reality. The defect is out there, circulating in the wild, and the customer is completely exposed to further harm. Think of this like an emergency room. You absolutely cannot perform delicate, exploratory surgery while your patient is actively bleeding out on the table. You must immediately apply a tourniquet. You have to stop the loss. This phase of the investigation is entirely about rapid, forceful, decisive containment. It's the adrenaline-fueled moment where the team must act with unquestioned authority to throw a protective shield around the customer before the real deep investigation even has a chance to begin.
The facility essentially goes into immediate lockdown. Quality issues the uncompromising command over the radios: stop all shipments. Do it now. Absolutely nothing leaves the loading docks. Trucks are halted in their tracks. Production immediately mandates a rigorous 100% manual inspection of every single piece of inventory currently sitting on the manufacturing floor, a Herculean task that must be completed before the sun sets today. Meanwhile, deep in the aisles of the warehouse, forklifts scramble to segregate the suspect's stock. They wrap entire pallets in thick plastic and slap bold, warning red tags on them to physically quarantine the potential danger. The alarms fade. The immediate bleeding has finally stopped. The customer is shielded from receiving any more defective pieces. But as the dust settles on the warehouse floor, a deeply sobering truth hangs heavy in the air.
And this sobering moment brilliantly illustrates a profound, almost philosophical distinction in the world of problem solving. That aggressive tourniquet we just applied, the red tags, the halted trucks, the extra inspections, that is merely a temporary superficial band-aid. Yes, we have stopped the bad shipments from leaving the building, but the dark underlying root cause, the ghost in the machine that created those scratches in the first place, is still out there, hiding in the shadows of the process. A fatal, incredibly common mistake that many organizations make is deeply confusing the immediate relief of containment with the lasting, permanent cure of a true corrective action. So burn this rule into your mind. Containment is strictly about survival, corrective action is about permanent evolution. With the customer temporarily safe behind our makeshift walls, the team can finally take a collective, deep breath, lower their shoulders, and begin the real work of looking deeply into the machinery to hunt down the true source of the error.
The frantic, heart-pounding rush of containment now slowly fades away, replaced by a much quieter, deliberate, and intensely methodical rhythm. The crisis response is over. The forensic analysis begins. The team transitions from emergency responders into meticulous scientists. They are stepping into the deeply analytical turning point of our mystery, a phase where assumptions are stripped away and only cold, hard evidence is allowed to speak. They know the culprit is hiding somewhere in the vast complexity of their operations, and they need a systematic way to drag it into the light.
To organize their hunt, the team stands before a massive whiteboard and draws out the classic Ishikawa fishbone diagram. They are lining up the usual suspects, categorizing every conceivable vulnerability in the process. They ask the hard questions. Could it be a failure of man, a tired operator making a fateful error on the night shift? Could it be the machine, a rogue, uncalibrated piece of equipment suddenly grinding out of alignment? Perhaps the method itself, the very instructions they follow, is fundamentally flawed. Or maybe the raw material from the supplier was compromised from the very start. They relentlessly interrogate their measurement systems, questioning if their gauges are lying to them, and they examine invisible environmental factors like humidity and dust. Every single category is subjected to unyielding microscopic scrutiny to find that one single broken thread that unraveled the entire operation. And as we bring these suspects into the light and prepare to interrogate them, I'd love to gently remind you to subscribe, like, and share this story with your colleagues if you're enjoying the deep dive. Your support keeps these investigations going.
Slowly, carefully, they isolate a physical clue, a subtle mark on the assembly line. They lock onto it and employ the relentless, terrifyingly simple logic of the 5 whys, descending step by step down the rabbit hole. They ask the first question: why was the product scratched? Because, physically, the delicate product rubbed against a hard plastic handling tray. Why did it rub against the tray? Because the edges of that specific tray were heavily damaged and jagged. Why was a damaged, jagged tray still circulating in the production loop? Because there was absolutely no inspection schedule to identify its wear and tear over time. Why was there no inspection schedule? Because, and here the true, terrifying culprit is finally unmasked in the cold light of day, the standard maintenance procedure for tray upkeep was entirely, completely missing. It wasn't a malicious act of sabotage by an angry employee, it was a silent, invisible void, an administrative ghost where a rigid, standardized procedure should have been standing guard.
Now, this discovery reveals something incredibly profound about how systems break down. A true, masterful investigation must always answer 2 completely distinct questions with absolute forensic precision. The first is what we call the occurrence cause, the raw physical mechanics of exactly how the defect was born. In our story, the jagged, damaged tray was the weapon that physically inflicted the scratch upon the part. But a second, equally important question remains hanging in the air. How on earth did a physically scratched part slip past the guards? This is the escape cause. Why did 250 obviously defective pieces seamlessly make it all the way to customer XYZ without anyone noticing? The bitter, uncomfortable truth is revealed upon reviewing the line. The final human inspector, dealing with glare and fatigue, simply missed the subtle silver scratches against the metal during their visual check. The team now completely understands the duality of the failure. They know the exact weapon that caused the wound, and they know the exact blind spot that allowed the bleeding to go entirely unnoticed. The mystery is definitively solved.
The emotional tone in the room fundamentally shifts. The thrill of discovery is over. Now, it is about cold, decisive, permanent action. The team has looked the root cause dead in the eye, and they are not going to simply put a Band-Aid over it. This phase is about corrective justice. It is about forging entirely new chains to lock this specific failure away forever, ensuring that no future operator or inspector ever has to face this exact phantom again.
They deploy a series of exact, deliberate weapons to completely eliminate the threat from their ecosystem. First, quality sits down and creates a rigorous, mandatory, written inspection checklist specifically for the handling trays, no more relying on memory or guesswork. Production immediately halts the line and executes the physical, sweeping replacement of every single compromised tray in the building, throwing the jagged weapons into the incinerator. The operators are pulled into specialized training rooms and taught exactly how to recognize the early, subtle signs of plastic wear and tear. And to absolutely ensure that these new protocols don't slowly fade into forgotten history, a relentless, non-negotiable weekly audit is permanently hard-coded into the management schedule. The vulnerabilities have been heavily armored. The immediate, terrifying crisis that began with that single, stressful customer email has officially been brought to a decisive end.
The storm has passed. We transition now into the calm, quiet aftermath of the investigation. But the veteran detectives on this team know that their job isn't truly finished until they can prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that their new laws of the process are actually holding the line. They must step back, let the system run, and wait for the empirical truth to reveal itself. They must validate their hard-won victory and ensure lasting peace on the factory floor.
And there is absolutely nothing more satisfying to an investigator than undeniable visual proof. The team gathers weeks later to review the data, and the evidence of their success is breathtakingly clear. Historically, those hidden, damaged trays had silently driven the defect rate up to a deeply concerning 3%, a steady bleed of profit and quality. But now, basking in the light of their rigorous corrective actions, the defect rate plunges. It drops dramatically, flatlining at a near-perfect 0.1%. It is highly satisfying, ironclad empirical proof that their justice was effective. The panicked customer complaints have entirely vanished into the ether, and the overall capability and confidence of the process have completely soared. Looking at this beautiful validation, if you're finding value in these insights and learning how to protect your own processes, please subscribe and share this explainer with your network. Now let's look at how we permanently seal the tomb on this issue.
With the victory empirically validated by the data, the team undertakes the final bureaucratic sealing of the case. They are fundamentally rewriting the DNA of the company so this specific threat can never be reborn. The standard operating procedures, the sacred texts of the factory, are officially updated and marked completely closed. The comprehensive training records, featuring the signatures of every single operator, are permanently filed away in the archives. And most importantly, the process failure mode and effects analysis, which is essentially the master living map of all potential operational risks, is heavily revised to account for this newly discovered vulnerability regarding plastic tray degradation. The risk has been permanently legally barred from ever causing disruption in this facility again. The fortress is entirely secure.
As the heavy files are finally closed and pushed to the center of the table, a profoundly warm cultural lesson emerges at the very heart of the 8D methodology. It is the golden rule of all great problem-solving, a philosophy that separates toxic cultures from world-class ones. We must relentlessly, fiercely blame processes, not people. Think about it. The operator didn't maliciously fail. The invisible system completely failed to provide them with a tray inspection schedule. The inspector at the end of the line didn't lazily ignore the scratches. The visual environment and the tools provided fundamentally failed to support their human eyes. By focusing all our energy on fixing the broken system, we completely remove the paralyzing shadow of fear from the factory floor. And in the total absence of fear, the honest truth can rise to the surface. In this profound moment of truth, we pause. We genuinely warmly acknowledge Mukesh, Kumar, Ravi, and Arun, the brilliant investigators who waded into the dark chaos, faced the pressure, and made the environment fundamentally structurally better for everyone.
Yet even as we bask in the glow of this beautifully executed success, we must leave you with a chilling cautionary tale, a dark warning about what inevitably happens when leadership teams lack this disciplined patience. History proves that disasters violently repeat themselves when frantic teams jump directly to solutions, blindly guessing in the dark without gathering the facts.
Tragedies occur on the line when they arrogantly skip the deep root cause analysis, or when they trick themselves into believing that a temporary red tag containment band-aid is a permanent structural cure. The failures will always return to haunt you when cases are prematurely closed without hard empirical data proving the fix actually worked. And most destructively, morale completely collapses when leaders point fingers and blame the innocent people sweating on the floor, instead of taking responsibility for the broken, fragile processes those people were forced to use. These are the fatal, completely avoidable mistakes that pry the door wide open for the next great catastrophe.
Our dedicated strike team triumphed. The data's pristine, and this specific, high-stakes case is finally closed. The vast factory floor hums once again, the symphony of production completely restored to its peaceful rhythm. But as you step back from this story, as you look at your own daily operations, your own teams, and your own complex routines, a quiet, lingering question remains hanging in the air. Are your processes truly, deeply secure against the next unknown threat lurking just out of sight in the shadows? The 8D methodology gives you the ultimate lantern to find out. Thank you so much for walking through this investigative journey with us today, for your time and for your curiosity. Stay sharp and take care.